Don't go to bed angry. You see, when you go to bed angry and you hold on to that, it actually affects you physically. And I've had this happen to me. In fact, I'm going to give you a story real quick, and I'm also going to give you two quotes that also emphasizes this point. So when you go to bed angry about something, when you're mad at someone for something they did or just something that happened throughout the day, when you go to bed and you hold on to that, it builds tension in your body and it affects you and it messes with your sleep. It messes with kind of your whole, I don't know, your whole system. And it actually just, it robs you of energy. And when you go to bed angry, if you actually fall asleep and then wake up angry, you will wake up drained and you just, you'll actually be in a worse state because, you held on to that. And I know it sounds kind of trivial, but let me just give you a real quick story and then two quotes to kind of emphasize the point. So a few years ago, I caught my daughter reading a book that I told her that she was not allowed to read. And when I found her reading that book, I was so mad that I took that book from her hands, ripped it in half, and threw it. And then I stormed out of the house. And I didn't give her a chance to say anything. I didn't give my wife a chance to stop me. I just tore that book and I just walked out because I was so angry, but I didn't want to do or say anything wrong because Lord knows I've done that. So I left and I was so angry and I just was gone for a while, and then I came back and everybody was kind of going to bed and I just didn't say a word to her. I just ignored her the entire time. I came back home and she went to bed, I went to bed, and my wife tried to talk to me. I just didn't want anything to do with it, so I just didn't talk to her at all. And so I went to bed and I tried to go to bed and I just held on to it, and I knew that I needed to resolve it because I can't stand unresolved conflict. There was a lot of that growing up, so I vowed that I would take care of things as fast as possible so I didn't have to live with that tension. So I know what that tension feels like because it was a lot of it in my home growing up. And so I knew it needed to be resolved, but I was like, no, I'll just deal with it tomorrow. I'm going to sleep on it and I'll deal with it then. I did not sleep that night. In fact, my stomach, there was just like an acidic knot in my stomach where I just could not, I couldn't breathe as well. Like I was short on breath and my stomach was just in knots, like super tight. Like I didn't want to move. And my veins were kind of pulsing and I felt cold all over. And I just kind of held on to that, right? And I kept tossing and turning, and I couldn't think, but I also couldn't fall asleep. Like I just kind of felt like trapped, right? And I finally eventually fell asleep, but I think I probably laid in bed for an hour and a half, just waiting to fall asleep. And that's pretty rare for me because I usually fall asleep pretty fast. But I just laid there and tossed and turned and woke up, I think once or twice throughout the night. Eventually woke up, and in the morning, I felt so drained. I didn't feel like I slept at all. And it just kind of weighed on me in the back of my mind. Eventually we did talk it out, and, I was mad, and, obviously she was mad, but we eventually talked it out and we got through it that day and the rest of the day. There was a lot of, we didn't still really talk the rest of the day, but the tension had been dissolved. You know what I mean? So it was like, okay, now we weren't talking just because we didn't have anything to say, as opposed to nobody wanting to talk because, I didn't want to be the first one to talk. She didn't want to be the first one to talk, or nobody wanted to say, I'm sorry. So, but once we hashed it out, that tension was gone, right? And like all of those feelings of, my stomach being in knots and just feeling drained, it just kind of dissolved with it. And so when you hold on to that anger, not only does it affect you physically, but you also kind of think about those things in the back of your head where you start thinking like, I can't believe they did this. They're in the wrong. Why would they do this? And then the problem with laying down and not falling asleep right away is that sometimes you think, and it's okay if you're thinking about good things, about problem solving, whatever, if you're thinking about, just the future or plans or something like that. But when you're thinking about something you're very angry about, sometimes you tend to think about the bad things, like how can I get them back, or they did this to me, they deserve this, or I'm not going to say sorry because it's all their fault, all of these things, right? You start thinking about bad things instead of good things. So I plead with you, do not fall asleep angry because it does not benefit you in any way. Look, even if that person is not there and you can't physically forgive them of that thing, let it go. I mean, there's no point in holding on to it, because as soon as you hold on to that when you go to sleep, you're going to carry that into the next day, and it's already going to start you off in a bad place the next day. And when you hold on to that thing, I mean, I've talked about this before, when you hold on to something and that other person may or may not be affected by whatever you're holding on to, but you can't control their actions, you can only control yours. And I'm telling you to let go, because if you just hold on to that anger and that offense, well, it's like poison, and it only affects you. It makes you feel worse. You can't control their actions, but you can control forgiveness, because forgiveness is a choice. I'm not saying it's an easy choice, but let it go, because it will affect you physically and mentally, and it will not affect you in any good way. So I'd like to give you two quotes to kind of just reiterate this, right? The first is a biblical quote, so it's a verse. The second one is not. So, either way, you could kind of take whatever you want. So the first one, the Bible verse, is Ephesians 4:26b. So A and B, the whole thing is, in your anger, do not sin. So that alone is kind of its own thing that you could unpack, but it just says, it basically says everyone's going to get angry, but don't sin in your anger, okay? So that's kind of its own thing. But B, the second part of the verse is, and do not let the sun go down on your anger, which means, don't hold on to that anger when it's dark, before you go to bed, because at that time they didn't stay up overnight. So don't go to bed angry, right? Don't let the sun go down on your anger, because when you hold on to that, you just take it into the next day, and that's not productive. But I also want to tell you about a quote from a guy named Baruch. There it is. Bernard Baruch. So the last name is Baruch, if you want to look him up. He was an investor and a presidential advisor during the Second World War, during the early 1900s, and he died in 1965. But anyway, he gave a quote that was just a great quote, and he says one of the secrets to a long and fruitful life is to forgive everyone of everything every night before bed. And I think that that's such a great quote, because a lot of stuff happens to us throughout the day, and we tend to hold on to things, or just continue to contemplate them well after that time. And sometimes we just get wrapped up in what's going on, that we just don't have that time to forgive those offenses, right? We just kind of think about them, or maybe we're busy, so something happens, like somebody cuts us off, or maybe something bigger happens throughout the day, but we don't have time to process it, because life is busy for everyone. So the day goes on and it winds down, and then you go to sleep at the end of the day, or whenever you go to sleep. The point is the important part of that quote is that it's saying that when you go to bed, you have that time to reflect before you fall asleep. Even if you don't get in bed right away, you can make those choices, you can reflect and then go to sleep. But a lot of times for us, we're busy up until we go to sleep. So when we go to sleep, it's kind of a time for us to reflect before we actually nod off. So the point of all that is to, if you haven't let go of that offense, whatever happened to you throughout that day, let go of it then. Let go of it before you go to sleep. One, because if you haven't done it throughout the day, it gives you that chance right before you fall asleep to do so. So you can reflect on that thing. You know what? Being mad about this is not going to help me any. It's not going to make my situation any better. But two, it's going to help you, because if you don't and you carry that into your sleep, it's only going to affect your sleep, which is only going to set your next day off in a bad place. So don't do it. Just don't do it. I know it's easier said than done, but I am proof. I have been through it. I have held on to offenses overnight, and I've felt that physical tension in my body, and I did not get any sleep. It's happened to me multiple times. My daughter was just the last time that I remember allowing that to happen. So anyway, I really hope that this video was helpful for you guys. I just wanted it to be a quick reminder of something that I think sometimes we just forget or overlook, but it's very important. Do not go to sleep angry, because it will not benefit you in any way, shape, or form. But that's it for this video. Hope you found it, inspiring or something. But yeah, I will catch you guys in another video. Take care, guys.